Go ahead and rock and roll. All right, thank you all for joining me today for this health presentation on the 8 R's of gut and whole body health. We're going to do part 3 of the series. So just as a brief recap here, we're basing it off of Dr. Lewis's recommendations of the 8 R's, and each month we're just going to go over one section, so it gives us time to be able to implement these action steps. So as a recap on step 1, which we were talking about removing, let's kind of start with why healthy gut matters. Anyone want to volunteer? So we've got 90% of illnesses are linked to an unhealthy gut, right? So when we think about here, unhealthy versus healthy, if we're having any of these ailments, it's probably a good thing to kind of look at your gut health overall and maybe have a conversation with me and maybe how we can maybe shift some things. 70% of our immune system is located in the guts, and about 95% of our serotonin is also made there in the gut, and that influences our mood. So also with removing offending foods, we had briefly talked about completing the food sensitivity test. I know a lot of people actually took advantage of this test. And if you haven't and want a link to it, just message me and I can send it your way. But it was really eye-opening for a lot of people on what their bodies actually didn't like, even though it's deemed healthy. All right, and then on step 2 is reducing pathogens and biofilms. We learned what biofilms were, which houses bacteria. When we think about biofilms, these microorganisms that form these houses, these biofilms, implicated in approximately 80% of all GI issues. So if we can get those pathogens out, the better off we're going to be, because eventually they're probably going to disrupt our overall health at some point. And ways to remove pathogens was to start within the mouth. So we had talked about some coconut oil pulling to try. Just a show of hands, has anyone tried coconut oil pulling? I actually just did mine this morning. Yes, okay. Did we like it? Have you noticed any differences yet? Yeah. Mouth feels a little cleaner, doesn't it, overall? Yeah, so if you haven't tried it yet, that might be something on your action steps to do. Also, make sure you're rinsing with salt water, brushing and flossing. Those are going to help get rid of those biofilms, which, remember, that's what causes that tartar and plaque on the teeth. All right, so that leaves us to step 3. All right, and we're going to make this curated and short and sweet. But if you have any questions, go ahead and just let me know along the way. So, supporting the microbiome and digestion. How? By improving gut ecology. What is even gut ecology? What does that mean? So that is the gut ecosystem, also known as our gut microbiome. So the gut microbiome is pretty fascinating in itself, okay? It's not a structure, but it is a community of organisms, okay? And that's going to be our bacteria. That's what we usually hear about. But it's also parasites and fungi and viruses. And they're all supposed to live in harmony together, right? So that way the more in harmony they are, the better off our overall health is. So how is that? How does the gut microbiome actually influence our overall health? Well, for starters, the gut microbiome has more genes than we do. We only have about 20,000 genes, which is a lot. They have millions. It's 150 to 1 ratio. With those genes, they can influence our genes by turning off or on certain genes that can actually affect our metabolism and immune responses. So, you've probably heard, I'm like, a lot of people will say, someone in my family has certain, say, health ailment. Doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have that health ailment unless you turn on a certain gene. Well, these microbes can turn on genes or off, okay? So we want to keep them happy. It's like having a whole little circuit board, okay, that they can just start punching stuff in. When we also think about, them having a lot more genes than us, they actually also have their own nervous system. With about 100 plus million neurons, that's going to affect our mood and our mental health through the gut-brain axis. Okay, so that's why sometimes when we start some probiotics or we start eating a little bit better, we're noticing our mood changes. Maybe we're not as irritable or as, and maybe in a less frustrating mood or whatever that may be, maybe a little, joyful or whatever that may be for you. But that is where that connection comes from. So when we think about the gut microbiome, where does it start? Are we just magically born with it and what we get is what we get? Not really. No, we get it from our mothers. So we're going to get their beneficial bacteria if we're born through the vaginal canal. Okay. If we were born by C-section, we're going to get the bacteria that's in that surrounding area. All right. So we're going to then start building off of that as we're babies and infants. So as you know, babies like to have everything directly to their mouths, right? Not just for probably a lot of it for the sensation, because that's a very sensitive area. All right. That's also how we populate that gut microbiome. So you're going to notice maybe sometimes if some babies are in a very sterile environment, they may actually have more health issues because they're not able to populate that gut microbiome as well as maybe a baby that was, crawled around on the floor, maybe ate a little bit of dirt. I guess that was me as a kid. I like to eat dirt, which I guess really helped me out for beneficial microbes because, I've been very fortunate with my overall health. And more of a diversity of those microbes is actually linked to better immunity and overall health and less risk of chronic diseases. Okay. So diet does shape our gut microbiome. So if we have, healthier eating habits, we're actually going to produce more healthier bacteria, okay? And they're going to flourish more. If we say eat a lot more processed foods, sugary foods, fast foods, we're actually more of a breeding ground for bad bacteria. So, and remember, we want that good bacteria, more good bacteria to keep everything in harmony for our overall health. Okay, any questions there? Because I know that can be a lot. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Archaea, that's a fancy, so it's a different category, like bacteria is a category. It's a category of microorganisms that I believe don't have a cell wall. And we only have 1.2% of those. Mhm. Stool testing, and actually I have a slide on that. Yep. Yeah, I know that's the Hey, I've done the Viome one and it was pretty eye-opening on testing on the different gut bacteria and stuff. And if you're interested in that, you're definitely going to want to Google search because every company has different price points and offers different things. But a lot of those tests you can do at home. I can check on his website because he adds new things all the time. So let me double check that and I'll send that to you. Absolutely. So, oh, and this other fun fact here is that when we think about, how big the gut microbiome is, they say that it's roughly weighs about 2 to 6 pounds. So just think about 2 to 6 pounds of, these different bacteria and things in our body that actually help govern our overall health. So it's pretty fascinating. It's not just a, hey, eat this to get this good bacteria and you'll be healthy. I mean, they do a whole complex, they're part of a whole big complex system for us. All right, so just briefly, the gut-brain axis or just because I know some people have had some questions. So the gut and brain are physically connected via nerves such as the vagus nerve. Um, the gut and brain are also chemically connected via transmitters or neurotransmitters. We have talked about serotonin before, but that's also dopamine and GABA, and there's a lot of other transmitters that help talk literally to the brain and the gut. So, and then that can also explain why, like maybe when we're stressed out, we might have some digestive upset. Or if you know people that maybe have, say, like IBS or any kind of just GI issues in general, are going to actually experience more anxiety and depression. So, with all that, how can we improve our gut ecology? So, thinking about maybe different foods or supplements that we can take. We are a big one for apple cider vinegar, and the liquid is going to be the better option. Now, just I guess the differences between the liquid and, like, say, the capsules and the gummies. That liquid is going to help more with insulin sensitivity and metabolism. Those capsules and gummies are still going to help with like the bloating and gas, but we want to make sure that you're definitely getting that increased stomach acid production, because good bacteria flourishes in a good pH. When I say good pH, I mean a pH of like 1 to 3 for the stomach. Okay, they flourish in that. If we're starting to get a pH of 4 and above, we're going to have more bad bacteria because they like the higher number pH, the more basic. Also, apple cider vinegar here has antimicrobial effects, so it does inhibit a lot of the harmful bacteria. I've had people who've had H. pylori, like a very mild case, be able to get rid of a lot of that bacteria just through apple cider vinegar. So it is pretty potent. All right, and then we've got biotin. I don't ever know if I pronounced that correctly, but you'll see this is actually out there on the kitchen counter if you've ever want to try it. So some people are not keen on apple cider vinegar, so you can try the biotin if you'd like. It's going to help support that healthy digestion, just like the apple cider vinegar. A big thing, improves the absorption of like B12, calcium, iron, magnesium. So that's going to really help with your energy production. So if we're feeling sluggish after we eat, it might be a good idea to try one of these. Okay. I've had people tell me that, after adding in just the biotin and just some slight changes, they could feel a major improvement with their overall gut health. And also, since we are absorbing all of our nutrients, it's going to help us maintain a healthy weight. So some people have seen some healthy weight shifts in the right direction. Also helps fight harmful bacteria and maintain a good acidic environment for good bacteria, and then for bacteria overgrowth too. Sorry, I thought I was going to sneeze and it went away. All right, another one is for ox bile. This is an important one for if you don't have a gallbladder. Okay, so we got to think, one of the functions of the gallbladder is to house in bile from your liver in a concentrated form. So when we eat fats, we can break down those fats and absorb those fat-soluble vitamins like vitamin A, vitamin D, E and K, and so forth. Okay, so also, this one has an antimicrobial property too, so it helps control the growth of harmful bacteria. So same thing as that biotin does in apple cider vinegar. So. All right, and then the last one here that we're going to talk about is essential enzymes. So when we think about enzymes, our pancreas actually shoots out enzymes just like it does insulin to kind of help every time that we eat. However, it may not be sufficient enough, so these enzymes are going to help with the breakdown of carbohydrates, proteins, you know, dairy products, even gluten. So if you're noticing any of these ailments here, it might be something that you just add into your daily routine when you eat. All right, any questions about any? No? Okay. So we had briefly talked about testing. So there are these two tests that Dr. Lewis suggests or recommends if you want to know more. One of them being a stomach acid test, testing for gastrin. So doctors usually do this test if you have maybe an overproduction of stomach acid, which is only happens about roughly 5% of people of the population. So it is something that you can see if maybe it's also maybe just too low as well. And then that stool testing kits that we had just talked about, you know, it can go over, you know, the good and the bad bacteria that it sees, different parasites and viruses. So you can kind of see if you're overloaded in one area or another, or just to kind of be more informed. So that way you can be more proactive. Any questions there? No? Okay. So what can we do today to start building a healthy gut ecology? We have any ideas? Fermented foods, right? Yes. All right. So sauerkraut, kimchi, you know, anything that's been fermented into vinegar, um, you're going to have, you know, good beneficial bacteria. And if you haven't seen already, I did bring a couple bottles of kombucha so that way you can give it a try. Because I know kind of everyone's different on what they like. We'll also need to look at cooked vegetables versus raw. You know, cooked vegetables provide that soluble fiber that feeds beneficial bacteria, and it's easier for the body to break down than it is raw vegetables. So if you are eating a lot of raw vegetables like you are right now, you know, taking either that apple cider vinegar, the biotin, or even a little bit of that kombucha after this meal here, and it should help with that digestion process. All right, here, our last slide. We've got omega-3s, which help support the gut lining. Remember, we talked about leaky gut syndrome last time. So we want to make sure that the walls of our gut lining is very secure, so we need these healthy cooking oils. So think about olive oil, avocado oil, coconut oil, things like that. Then nuts and seeds provide fiber, which act as prebiotics of feeding that good bacteria. So that will be your action step for this time around, is trying out new foods that are in vinegar or trying one of those supplements to see how that aids in your overall digestion. So if you have any questions for me, please reach out. There's my email. And I can't wait to see you all for next time, because next time we're going to be talking about how to add beneficial organisms, so different probiotic supplements and such. All right. Thank you.